Hello, hello, and welcome to Saturday Sound Bites. I'm your host, Veronica Sofer. Thrilled to be here with you on another beautiful Saturday because here on Saturday Sound Bites, we talk about all the things you need to grow your business and your visibility strategy. We talk about public relations, marketing, advertising, branding, all the components that are going to help you grow your business. And oftentimes it's got a lot to do with alignment. So I've got a great guest today that's going to shed some insight and help us really connect all of the dots. But before we bring her on, let's take care of some housekeeping. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of Saturday Sound Bites. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, be sure to drop us some comments and let us know that you've caught the replay by putting hashtag replay. And my guest and I will certainly circle back and connect with you. So let's go ahead and start this awesome episode off. I have the amazing Whitnee Nicole joining us. Welcome to Saturday Sound Bites, Whitnee.
Thank you. I'm so excited to join this conversation.
Oh, yes. We're excited too because it is all about sharing knowledge and helping each other grow our businesses. So, Whitnee Nicole. Whitney, before we go ahead and start talking about that, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got here. Because I always think it's important for our guests to make a connection with our expert on to find opportunities to kind of share some similar experiences.
Yes. So my origin story, it has a lot to do with the mental health field, that industry. So I kind of feel called to go even further back to where I kind of started to pick up and connect with this side of myself that really desired to help people on their journey, because that was what it was really about. When I was a kid, I always connected into, let's call it spirit, let's call it source, universe, the great I am. I know we have different names for it. So I was raised in the church, but at the same time, I was one of those kids who was always very inquisitive. I always wanted to kind of know the full story. So I was that kid always bugging my mom, tell me more. People at the church, tell me more. Well, this doesn't explain this and this doesn't explain this. I wanted more. So upbringing was definitely, it came with its challenges. And coming from the home, I knew right away, like the profession that I wanted to go into was to help other people get clear. Because I realized there was so much confusion. There is so much confusion in the way we move through life. So got started at university, and right away I was like, okay, social work, counseling, something around there. I landed on marriage and family therapy, and then of course did sort of the leading up disciplines. So I have a couple of degrees. I started interning right away at a family and youth agency, interning, and then went and got my master's degree and started working in the clinic right away. Started seeing couples and individuals dealing with like everything, anxiety, depression, relationship stuff, which of course, and to kind of speed this story up because it can get long, I went into private practice because there was this piece of me where it was like, okay, how do I still integrate the spirituality piece? Because I felt like it was the divine piece, almost kind of like the unexplainable of the psychology and of the what I like to think of as like the more tangible pieces of how we're taught to counsel in the clinical field. And I was, in my own personal life, I was bringing all of that in, right? Like to help myself understand myself. So private practice was like a natural decision for me to want to be able to spread my wings and be a little bit more free. And I got my feet wet into scaling my business and bringing some of those more like masculine energy pieces to the forefront, as opposed to working for someone else. It was like, it was all on me. And then I got to a point in private practice on the tail end where I was like, there's still more. There's still a deeper dive, a deeper connection that I want to bring people into. And I was like, oh, but how can I do that? I've got my state board saying, hey, be careful of these pieces, liability and just evidence-based modalities. So a lot of what I found, a lot of things in spirit, it's hard to explain, and it's hard to always feel like you have that evidence-based proof. But what I found was that my clients were still able to connect and release and expand through it. Yeah. And so This is how I end up being a full-time spiritual coach. It was the best decision I ever made. There was so much freedom, and I do believe that the people I serve, they get to benefit from that too. Um, and alignment is one of the biggest pieces of it
Oh,
all.
absolutely, absolutely, and
Yeah.
I love that journey from clinical, academic, psychological
Yeah.
understanding of how to help people to really just letting your soul calibrate itself, if you will, to the spiritual part, and then all of a sudden you have this new title of a spiritual coach, right? I mean, it's amazing how that happens.
It yes, and and it's not to say that I definitely learned through trial and error a lot. It's kind of like there were times where I was like, I'm not going to follow my alignment. I'm going to follow the market. I'm going to follow the recommendation of XYZ expert or someone who's in my field, so to speak, in my lane, but maybe a few steps ahead. And they're like, this is what I did. And I feel like that makes it really tough too. When we
Yeah.
talk about like a practice of alignment, there's so much out there that claims to be able to get us to that result. And I
Yeah,
think,
that's so true, and I love how you, described you that you experienced those even in your own journey.
oh my gosh. Yeah, I've fallen on my butt so many times and like out of alignment. It's kind of like straying off your path or
Yeah,
something, but
yeah,
just feeling very convinced that I'm like, no, this is the right thing. This is, even when it came to my marketing and stuff, there was a time where I was really going in on my marketing and trying to do all these things, but not taking into account enough the energetics part that would be coming naturally from me. I was trying to be and show up in a role genuinely to be successful and genuinely wanting to help and call in my clients. And so there was so much undoing that
yeah,
was that was done.
yeah.
You
No,
know?
I can totally see that, and I think our listeners and viewers will definitely appreciate that. So, Whitney, let's talk a little bit about what it really means to be aligned in your business, because I think some of us have this concept of what it means, right? And for those of us in the woo woo, we have some sort of barometer that tells us when we're out of alignment. But what does it really mean to be in alignment with your work?
I think one of the biggest indicators of, hey, something's off is feeling this resistance in your body. So I feel like
Mhm.
that can show up as fear. Common is anxiety. Sometimes for some people, it starts to look like a depression. It's basically like this feeling of forward motion and flow. And then all of a sudden, it's not like it's
Mhm.
being disrupted. And w- if we're paying attention, and I think this is the big piece, is our awareness. You know, are we paying attention to how we feel? Sometimes I feel like at the height of masculine energy, we can be on an autopilot. And I've definitely been in that situation many, many times where I'm just so determined, I'm so fixed, I'm in a tunnel vision, and I'm not able to come back to the awareness. So I think for people listening, it's like even making this a part of your daily or whatever you can, like your practice. It's like coming home to yourself. Yes, out there in the world can be very intense, crazy, busy. We're getting a lot of external feedback, but to be able to check back in, um, another more tangible or practical way I've coached my clients is like the body scan.
Mhm.
I was actually telling my mom this the other day because she was saying she kind of felt like she wasn't noticing enough that was enough things about what was going on within her and missing things that were really important. And I said, well, mom, have you tried like at the top of the morning doing some sort of a practice? And I feel like the beauty also is that that can look very different for each of us.
Mhm. Mhm.
Some people it's meditation, and some people can sit in meditation for quite a while others can't,
Yeah.
or
You're like 2 minutes. Nope, didn't work.
yeah, our mind. So I think a more even simpler way to enter in is the body scan, where you bring in the breath work, and then you kind of just scan from the top of your crown to your feet, to your soles of your feet, and just kind of like take inventory of what you feel. And I get deeper and deeper into the practice with my clients in terms of like how to not bring judgments in, how to, if our mind goes astray, okay, what am I going to eat for dinner? What am I just gently bringing it back to the body scan. But
Mhm.
to answer your question, just reiterate, definitely if you're feeling a disruption in the flow, I feel like that's a huge indicator that like something's happening in the alignment that wants your attention.
Mhm. Mhm. And so when you've identified, well, maybe not identified, but when you've noticed, right, that you're out of alignment, because
Mhm.
sometimes you can identify it and sometimes it's not as obvious. How do we course correct? I mean, how do we really do that kind of work?
Now, this is where it does get a little bit more challenging, at least in my experience, because I'm pretty observant. And I feel like a lot of us human beings can be observant and we're very intelligent with that. We're like, okay, we're out of alignment. Now comes the honoring of ourselves to get back
Mm.
into alignment. Why this can be so difficult for us. It's almost as if the norm is to not. It's
Yeah.
almost as if we're conditioned to not honor. I had a question from one of my coaching clients recently that said, she felt disrupted in her body. She wasn't feeling well. She wasn't feeling in alignment. But she says, but I feel like I can still get my body up and go to the computer and go send all these emails. She's like, but should I? Should I? It's a hard question.
Mhm.
Um, because she's like, I also don't want the energy that's happening in my body to then showcase itself within the emails, right? That's like going against the alignment. And I feel like it's such a personal journey and a personal decision, like how much of that, because there have been times where I haven't felt, 100% and I still showed up to things. And
Mhm.
I won't sit here and say that it was crappy, like it was bad. There's something in there for someone. But I feel like the bigger question is like when we're talking about like the mastery levels of what we're trying to do, honoring and going back into the sacred practice to more or less to take care of ourselves, to get
Mhm.
back into alignment. So for some people, they may get the knowing um, through the body scan or through the awareness of like, okay, this needs to be my right next step. And I think for others of us, it's like just taking care,
Yeah.
resting, and maybe just starting there.
Yeah.
Anything but going against the alignment is better.
And it's almost like you need permission for that in a lot of ways because as you said it, I mean, Whitney, literally, I was like, yes, of course. But in my head, I'm like, girl, you don't do that. I mean, like that other little voice on this side of the shoulder, right? And it's kind of like you need permission in a lot of ways to be out of alignment so that you can get back in alignment with your business.
Mm. Yeah, the permission piece is very, very interesting. And when I think about like how different human beings move through permission, what comes to mind, and this is probably a little bit of my therapy brain coming in, it's like that backstory, like our
Yeah.
experience, where are we given permission? Because you do meet people who some of them seem to have all the permission to do it. They're just like, boom, I have all the permission to show up the way I need to. And then some of us really struggle with it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And in
So
certain
when you're working with someone, what are some of the challenges that you see um, that maybe subconsciously or consciously just show up for your clients when they're talking about getting back on track, whatever that looks like for them?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is like what I call like the blind spot, or it tends to be in the subconscious, where let's say even for example, they're hiring me to help them grow their business. But they also know that a part of why they're hiring me, and maybe this is part of what they're working on stepping into more, is aligning with their energy. But if they have a tunnel vision or they're very fixated on I want to get to X amount of dollars in revenue, right? Like I want to get to this place in my business. I feel like that's an example of where the inner work around the alignment we may see some gaps. It just may be a challenge. And so it's my job to sort of meet them where they're at and work with them. Because one thing I've noticed that does not work, I made these mistakes early enough to not repeat them, is if you try to push someone into their alignment, or force them before they're ready, it also doesn't work.
Yeah.
It that resistance will come into totally just it's like a defense mechanism that's so automatic for people.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And, timing is everything. And sometimes, we're in different seasons of our lives. You may have small children, you may be an empty nester. And so sometimes that alignment has a lot to do with timing too.
I say that all the time, exactly, divine timing. Like it's like the ingredients. I feel like there's so many ingredients that go into it. And so when we talk about stepping into greater alignment or like an alignment practice, it's always an alignment to be kind to ourselves, I
Hmm.
feel. And if
Hmm.
even trying to force yourself into alignment doesn't feel very safe, like, you know,
Yeah.
even though it's like supposed to be a good thing.
Yeah, and sometimes it feels like, you're literally gonna cross an interstate, like, and cars are coming, just going back and forth, and you're like, "Okay, maybe this wasn't a good idea."
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. It's an unfolding, it's a journey, it's not like an arrival, like, "Oh, I finally, trekked up the top of the alignment mountain and, my journey is complete."
Yeah,
No.
doesn't quite work like that.
No, no. It keeps going, and especially those of us who, are into self-development or are always reinventing ourselves through our work, our businesses. Man, I feel like the alignment is even more tough when you're birthing something new.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Whoa, I thought I was really good in this alignment space, and now there's this."
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's so true. Well, Whitney, before we wrap up the episode, I wanna make sure that you've, shared all of your expertise with us because I know our podcast listeners love to be able to tune in and get some nuggets. What are 2 tips that people need to be thinking about right now, today, to ensure they're in alignment or get back in alignment or just become aware?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest tips, one of the biggest takeaways is being kind to yourself. And if you feel like you've done something out of alignment that feels hurtful to yourself, that feels like, even if you're realizing that through listening to any of this, just it's okay to not judge yourself, release the judgment, in other words, of that, because it's almost like a mind trick. We think that, okay, we know we want to come back into alignment, but if we're holding ourselves hostage for how we fell out of alignment, so to speak, that falls out of alignment too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's a double whammy
yes.
almost.
So you can always refer back to releasing judgment and stay with yourself and show yourself love in however that enters in for you, and know that you don't have to. The other tip is not knowing that you don't have to measure yourself up against other people and where they're at in their journey. You may see people who it just feels like, wow, they just have it together and blah blah blah. It's like we never know, what how they arrived. We never know also what's going on behind that. So I think it's best to just stay in a place of grace and love with oneself, and also thank yourself when you are able to do that.
Mhm. Oh, I love
Hmm.
that. That's some really great advice. All right, Whitney, how can people connect with you? What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
If anyone is interested in having a conversation or jumping on a call with me, they can go to hellowhitneynicole.com. And that's Whitney with 2 E's and no Y. It's a little different. If
I
you want.
like it though.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, and or you can go, at Inner Vibe Tribe on Instagram if you wanna kinda just, like, follow along and check it out.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right, folks. And make sure that you check out the show notes because we'll include all the links for Whitney Nicole there as well. It has been such a pleasure having you on the show. I loved the conversation. And I know it's just so important that people really tune in, be kind to themselves, and make sure that they are living out their life's purpose. So you gave us a lot to think about.
Yay, I'm so glad. Thank you for having me, this was great.
Awesome. All righty. We are wrapping up this episode of Saturday Sound Bites. I hope you really get a chance to connect with Whitnee Nicole. All her contact information is in the show notes. Folks, we want to make sure you have all the tools you need to live out your life's purpose and really grow your business in a way that's going to help you shine. So make sure you're tuning in to Saturday Sound Bites every week. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, drop us some comments and my guest and I will certainly connect with you. Put down a hashtag replay if you're catching us on an off week, and we will also be sure to circle back. So with that, I'm wrapping up by sending you lots of positive energy and